Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Tava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatoshmaham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome to our Panchadasi. I guess we begin today from we did look into the definition of vichara last time, and then we went into the paragraph of non-duality is not a state. Moksha, now I have added that. I'm saying moksha is not a state. And then that took us almost all the way under that title. And then we have again looked into the notion of nirvikalpa samadhi, and then we have seen that you will not be here if you are not meant to be here. If Shwara brought you here is to experience the world, experience duality. The refusal to experience the world is as an offense, as I was putting it, and but yet a lot of people are willing to sacrifice their life to by practicing and achieving nirvikalpa samadhi, because if you stay a full time in nirvikalpa samadhi state, you are going to miss out on your life. But then there are people who really want to miss out on one's life, and the intriguing part is, so and then why not to put an end on your life? Okay, samadhi is not an answer. Samadhi ends at a certain point, and samadhi never addresses the fundamental problem. So samadhi comes under the mistaken notion that the world is real, and therefore I have two realities: the world and myself as consciousness, and I impair. Impair is a word. Impair reality to the world, and it's not impair.
I think you're looking for impart.
You impart reality to the world, and then you take it to be something to be removed, okay? Because if you see it as just a mirage, and then the mirage is not going to affect the sand in the desert, so it's just a projection. So because we impart reality to this superimposition of namarupas, and then we get into the trouble of trying to remove the world, which is not under our power, of course. And then we go for nirvikalpa samadhi. Nirvikalpa samadhi is not something that allows you to live your life, and furthermore, it ends when the momentum created fades away. So what's the only solution? The only solution is to remove the fundamental ignorance in respect to imparting reality to the world. So I'm going to have to practice this word impart many times today, not to forget anymore. So the trick is that to remove that ignorance that says that reality is duality. During the teachings, so the teachings are going to do the job, and the teachings of Vedanta go through phases, in which two knowledge unfold. The knowledge is received by Shravana, and then it's reflected upon, contemplated, and then assimilated as we do our work gradually, and then internalized as well. So it says that the teaching of Vedanta, during the teaching of Vedanta, two kinds of knowledge unfold. Avantara Vakyam are statements that consciousness exists. So they produce, this first phase of the teaching produce the knowledge, the notion of what we call paroksha jnana. So it is a recognition that there is something other than the mind, something other than the matter. The body is made out of matter. So there is something which is subtler than the mind, and you say, yeah, that is the real self. The self, there is such a thing as the real self. So this is the first step, avantara vakya, a recognition that there is such a thing as the self, as consciousness. And once we know, yes, now I got to the bottom of the problem, which is there is something such as consciousness, and I need to get this consciousness because this consciousness is free of the mind and free of the world. So they produce what we call indirect knowledge. So there is such a thing as consciousness, and I want it, okay? There is something as a true self, and the true self feels good, the true self is free, and so on, and I want to meet Mr. True Self. So this is indirect knowledge, paroksha jnana. For example, the self is the cause of the world, is a Mahavakyam. Mahavakyam are statements that deliver direct knowledge. Direct knowledge, technically, we call a paroksha jnana. For example, you are limitless consciousness. So the self is the cause of the world. So the example we are making, the author here is giving an example of two kinds of knowledge, okay? The indirect knowledge and the direct knowledge. The direct knowledge are the Mahavakyams. And the first example here, it said Avantara Vakyam, and the other one is Mahavakya, okay? So the first one is that the self has a certain quality or property that causes the world, okay? The self is the cause of the world, okay? So is it a declaration or a statement of identity? No, it's talking about the self, and it's saying that the self has the power to produce the world, okay? So it's not giving us a direct statement in regards to reality or to consciousness, but it's giving us indirect indication of what is the self. The self is the causeless cause of the universe, okay? So this is not a Mahavakyam, but it is a Avantara Vakyam. Mahavakya are statements that deliver direct knowledge, such Aham Brahmasmi. Which is a paroksha jnana. For example, you are limitless consciousness, okay? So Tatvamasi, I am that consciousness, or I am consciousness alone, I am such as Brahman. Such statements do not imply time, space, or effort. So it does not imply anything. No distance between myself and the self, and does not address any aspects or powers within the self or consciousness, such as that the self is the cause of the world. So such statements do not imply time, space, effort, or attributes related to the self. How long does it take for the snake to disappear? When the rope is known, is seen. So when you see the rope as a rope, and then that that mistaken a perception is destroyed, and there is no time involved. It only takes a scene. And what kind of effort we need to do to see the rope? So there are only efforts to the extent of improving our eyesight. When we are there, oh my God, there is something here. I'm still not seeing the rope. And then you just use some drops, or you find your glasses. So there are some actions that can be done to help you to see. You can improve your eyesight. You can improve your intellect by yoga. We do yoga to develop those qualifications. But it does not take effort once you have the qualifications in place, once you have your glasses over there. Let me close this WhatsApp here. Okay. So once you have the proper eyesight, you have the qualifications in place, and then it does not take any effort. It takes a seeing. It takes a moment of clear understanding, a click of seeing, a click of understanding. Time, space, and actions are not involved in that assimilation of the Mahavakyas presented by the Upanishads. I had a meeting with someone who was asking to meet with me. He's not interested in Vedanta, but he wants to know more about certain things. And then I end up explaining him how this self-knowledge occurs, and the difference between just academic self-knowledge, intellectual understanding or heard, because the guy knows Ramana Maharaj and other guys. So what is the difference? So it is about that. So it's just a moment in which you see that so clearly and doubtlessly. And in that moment, you just think like, oh my God, how could I not see? Why I did not see it before? It's so obvious. Why I was still doubting the scriptures. So it is a simple moment. And I was describing to here the moment this recognition took place. There was something incredible, and it was the most ordinary moment in which I just looked into a statement in a book, and then it clicked. And then I knew that there was consciousness rather than the mind and the body. So this is the moment that the rope is seen as a rope, and then the snake disappears. What is the snake? I am the body and the mind. And I feel insecure and inadequate, and so on. And then when you see through the body and mind, and you see that you are limitless, free, and independent consciousness, and then the game is over. And many things unfold after that. If that scene had the power to break through and not leaving any room for forgetfulness or doubt to settle in again. You understand? And then here it says that Shravana does not produce direct self-knowledge. In the case, we have obstacles for that assimilation. So Vedanta is just about removing the obstacles to my full assimilation and appreciation of my nature as limitless consciousness. So there are some obstacles. The obstacles are usually the identification with the body mind. It boils down to that. Some investments in my mistaken identity as the body mind that creates great confusion, and that has to be addressed again and again through this Shravana and Manana, exposure to the teachings until those obstacles, which are my mistaken notions that I may be both. This is a very common one. I may be both. I may be consciousness, but I still impart reality to the body-mind. And I believe that I am also the body-mind. You understand? So those obstacles have to be removed with Shravana and Manana. Indirect knowledge is not self-knowledge and much less freedom from this cosmic ignorance, which is I am the body-mind. Indirect knowledge is academic knowledge, and you still see the self as something other than yourself to begin with. First, you see the self as something that you have to accomplish, gain, or meet, and then, furthermore, you haven't really assimilate what it means I am the self, because I am the self should have the power to completely destroy the rope in a way that you can't see yourself as the rope anymore. You can't see the snake. You can't see the snake as a snake anymore. You can only see the rope. You can try hard to see the snake again, but the snake disappears once forever. Once for all. In fact, indirect knowledge is a source of frustration because it locates the self somewhere outside, away from me. And that is typically what happens when we try to merge with the self by the means of samadhi or yoga, meditation. So it's a great source of frustration, because the lack of the understanding that I am the self, regardless of my mental state. No, I say that I am not the self, and I'm going to make the self disappear if I produce a silent mind. And then when I have a silent mind, I have the feeling that, oh, Jesus is the self. And then the self was reduced to a state, and then the frustration comes. The biggest frustration is not only that the self is something other than yourself, but it comes and go, come and go, come and go. You understand? And then again and again, you are like, oh my God, when I'm finally merged with the self and never walk away from it. Again, it reminds Pampaji telling people, this is it, this is it, this is it. We saw it in a previous class here, the this is it gurus. This is it, this experience, this state is it. And then the person was very happy to get that validation from the guru, and everybody was somehow validating and looking up to this person. And then after some time, the person would go in satsang again and sit in front of Papaji, would say like, oh, Papaji, I lost it. And then Papaji, he was a nice, good, inspirational Shaktipati guru, but he was not a teacher at all. So somebody sits in front of him and say like, oh, I lost it. Rather than say, how did you lose it? Where did it go? You were the self. And he would go into certain arguments, say, of course you lost it. You lost it because you did not stay tightly hugging or embracing it. You understand? When you see the self, you should just embrace it so that you don't let the self go away. So duality again, myself and the self. I, the Jivatma and Paramatma. So I have to really embrace very tightly Paramatma. And he would say, oh, it's like you find the most beloved person of your life, but you start going to the pub every night. And then when you see your beloved walks away from you. So it's those notions, they were beautiful. There was certain inspiration behind these constructs, they're saying, no, if I find the self, I'm going to really never let it go. Yeah, it's okay. There are some positive elements in that construct, like I say, go for it. And when you meet it, stay with it, meaning to say, don't distract your mind too much, because otherwise your mind may, again, get attached to the world rather than to the self. Like Shimayananda used to say, the entire process is to disconnect from the world of objects and connect to yourself, to the self, the consciousness. Yeah? Of course, we can disconnect our mind from the world, that we can say, but we can never connect our mind to the self, because the mind is just a reflection within the self. You understand? It's reflected consciousness. It's always permeated or pervaded by consciousness. Yeah? So we say disconnect from the world and then connect to the scriptures until you have no doubt that I am that limitless consciousness. And my mind and the physical body, they're just instruments of experience that are going to exhaust their karma. No? So we have these obstacles that need to be removed so that indirect knowledge can be converted in direct knowledge, and then one can enjoy freedom from this fundamental ignorance. And indirect knowledge is a source of frustration, as we have just now examined. Direct knowledge of the self is not possible because the self is not away from you. So here again, we have this apparent contradiction. It says like indirect knowledge is a problem because you project the self away from you, right? And you are the self. Direct knowledge, on the other hand, is not really possible because in order to get this direct knowledge, self-knowledge, now you should be in that context away from the self, and then you got to the self. Now, but we need to understand what it means. It means that direct knowledge does not come from moving from where you are until you merge with the self. Direct knowledge is only possible when you understand that the self or consciousness is your very nature, was never away from you. So is direct knowledge possible or impossible? It is possible, to add it a little bit, this, not to leave any room for misunderstanding. Direct knowledge is totally possible, and it appears to be the real purpose of life. Okay? So direct knowledge of the self is impossible by means of action, time, space, and merging into the self, because the self is not far away from you. And then how direct knowledge, self-knowledge takes place? Not by time, space, action, or anything like that. It takes place by understanding that you are the self. So direct knowledge of the self is not possible. And then how is self-knowledge, direct self-knowledge possible? It's not about understanding and knowledge about the self, but it's understand that I am the self, I was the self, ever will be the self. So I am limitless consciousness, and everything I did has brought great frustration, but brought me to a certain degree of maturity. And within this maturity, I could get that I am limitless consciousness. No? Yeah, knowledge of the self implies duality. The self-inquiry in the light of the teachings of Vedanta converts indirect knowledge into direct knowledge by supplying the reasoning that resolves the proximity issue. This is a beautiful statement. So this inquiry, this investigation, this vichara, is going to, it serves the purpose to convert this indirect self-knowledge into direct self-knowledge. How so? By supplying the logic, the reasoning, that is going to destroy the notion that there is a distance between myself and the self. Then the proximity issue. Oh, how far you are from the self? Oh, I have been doing a lot of meditation, and I feel that I'm closer and closer as the years and the decades go by. So no. So Vedanta is going to supply the reason that's going to destroy that notion of space and destroy the notion of time as well. The notion that the self is now here, present, 8, 9, 10 in the morning, but later on when I go to my office to do my work, the self somehow remains at home and I go there without it. So time and space do not really apply to our true fundamental essential nature, without which we cannot go anywhere and we cannot do anything. Liberation is a firm conviction that the unreality of the world, liberation is a firm conviction of the unreality of the world. If liberation was the non-perception of the world, there will be no liberation in life except when we're in deep sleep. Oh, yes, I'm free when I'm in deep sleep. Fair enough, you're free. But it does not last much long, And and as you get older, you tend to sleep less, at least in my case. And when the circumstances of the world are very challenging, one tends to sleep even a little bit less as well, because the mind remains a little bit more like that. So it's not really a solution to imagine that I'm free when I sleep. And then some people say, okay, but you can create a certain sleep, induce yourself to do a sleep, sort of sleep, which is called the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And then I have those hours of sleep without dreaming, and I have the best possible deal with Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and I'm free during the time in which the world, which I impart reality, was removed. So no, liberation is a firm conviction of the unreality of the world, okay? And we need to add to that a firm conviction of the unreality of the world and a firm condition of the reality of the seer of the world, the reality of the only the reality of the only real factor, which is the true nature of the seer of the world. The world is mithya. I, the absolute seer, I am the only reality. So this is a firm conviction that the world is mithya and I am satya. So this is what brings about liberation, is this firm conviction, this firm, clear discrimination between I, Satya, and the world of change, mithya. If liberation was rather the disappearance of the world, there would be there would be no liberation in life, for the reasons that we just mentioned. Even the greatest yogs, they come out of Nirvikalpa Samadhi once that effort somehow lose momentum in one's mind. The following verse, there are 3 verses combined. Discrimination can bring about direct or indirect knowledge. It also converts knowledge, indirect knowledge, to direct knowledge. The knowledge awareness is indirect knowledge. The knowledge I am awareness is direct knowledge. The same concept. The only thing here that now we could observe is that it says that what brings direct knowledge is discrimination. It says may bring or can bring, okay? So it says that discrimination, okay? And of course, this is the most the most subtle and the most the final and finest discrimination, which is discrimination between the aham, the ego, the intellect, and consciousness. So it is the conscious, is the intellect, a refined intellect discriminating original consciousness from the reflect consciousness, which brings about the human intellect. So it is this discrimination that usually bring about this conversion. This is a very, very cognitive, conscious process of discriminating Satya and Mithya, as suggested by the teachings of the Upanishads and Vedanta. So it's constantly understanding Satya, understanding Mithya, and not confusing, not superimpose one on another. So this is called discrimination, and more often than not is what bring about knowledge or self-knowledge. In both cases, indirect self-knowledge and direct, because indirect self-knowledge is a must. Intellectual self-knowledge is the first platform or level from where we can how to say, we can convert or shift, or finally understand that there is no spatial time difference or distance between myself and myself, because myself is my essential nature. So as I was saying, this discrimination begins to produce a doubtless intellectual self-knowledge, a doubtless intellectual indirect knowledge. And then once the intellect is fully satisfied with the logic, the analysis presented by the Upanishads, and then from that level, one has no doubt that I am consciousness, and it is, I don't know, I remember a certain thing popped in my mind when I was living in Olympia, Washington. Whenever there was New Advaita teacher in town doing something over the weekend, I would be there. And then one time came a young woman from Gangaji. She was associated with Gangaji. Gangaji was associated with Papaji. Papaji was associated with Ramana Maharaj. So this young lady comes, and then of course there is no teaching. There is all those, those things of the New Advaita, and then she comes, and then almost no words, and a few words here and there pointing to the self, and then some music. She used to play music, spiritual music, and then the atmosphere of contemplation or sattvic atmosphere was created, and then in that atmosphere, the statement such as I am limitless consciousness was so clear to me, very, very clear. And then I remember one time I was saying, like, I wonder, I mean, I know so clear that I am consciousness, and I wonder why I seem to forget it again and again if it is so clear to me. You understand? So I shared that with the group, with this young woman as well. And but why I had that impression that, it's so clear that I am consciousness now that my mind is in a certain state, and then I can see consciousness shining in the intellect as peace, as satisfaction, as bliss, as love. I see, no, this is the self, and I am this self. This is the most essential nature of mine. So why I was so clear about that, but that would fade after some time once I would leave those satsang atmospheres or environment, is because that was still a sort of indirect self-knowledge that was never really converted into direct self-knowledge. And I used to attribute that the self appears according to my mental condition. And then when it appears, I have a firm conviction that I am the self. And then when my mind changes, that conviction goes. You understand? That condition goes. So, and then my self-knowledge was intellectual, it was indirect, because it was subject to what? To my mental condition. You understand? So the direct self-knowledge can never be dependable on my mental condition. It has to be assimilated and gained in a manner that it's not subject to forgetfulness, even if your mind becomes very disturbed or rajasic or whatever. It's not destroyed your self-knowledge. Understand? So that's the difference between direct and indirect. Indirect self-knowledge is something that we experience, as a mental condition. We superimpose that mental condition on the self as the self. This is the superimposition of Mithya in Satya. And then when that mental condition changes, like every time it does, and then it appears to us that the self has left us behind. But no, the self is never leaving us behind. The mental condition left us behind. And it's going to be always the case, always. No mental condition remains the same, because the nature of mental conditions is time, beginning, middle, and end. So therefore, this discrimination is what brings us to direct self-knowledge. And it's required even for the indirect self-knowledge, the understanding or discrimination between my mind and consciousness, my body and consciousness, and so on. It also converts indirect knowledge, the same discrimination, simulation of that intellectual knowledge. The knowledge consciousness exists is indirect knowledge. The knowledge I am consciousness is direct knowledge. Same concept. So, any questions?
What was that one statement you read in the book?
Well, I used to hold it for some time, but now I was telling this guy yesterday and I couldn't remember exactly, but was something on those lines that, you cannot be what you see. If you see something, you witness something, you have to be, something other. I mean, it was a sort of discrimination between the seer and the seen that was very present in those teachings, or pointers of Nisargadatta Maharaj and Papaji, and even Moji at the time. I was used to read some of Moji statements or pointers and so on. So you cannot see cannot be what you see, what you witness. You understand? So I am discussion. And the most ridiculous statement that we hear so many times, huh? Can you hear me? The weather changed here and now it's pouring, and the image of Lean has frozen, and I wonder if you can at least hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you too, Avidya. You're coming across a bit broken here. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's my internet.
I close my video to see if it gets better. So let's see if we can conclude this class. We now consider the nature of the self with a view to attaining direct self-knowledge, which, are you still with me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now you can drop your video if you believe it helps, Lynn. I was not sure if the thing collapsed or what it was. We now consider the nature of the self with a view to attaining direct knowledge, which is the means for moksha, liberation. From the verse 18 to 21st, Vidyaranya introduced the main teaching methodology, the teaching of the fourfold consciousness, Chit, Chatu, Vidya, Prakriya. For teaching purpose, the self is presented as divided in two. The teaching purpose, the self is divided into two, both Jiva and Ishvara. There is an original supporting consciousness. So first, Vidyaranya introduced the teaching methodology of the fourfold consciousness. He's breaking consciousness into four, okay? So for teaching purpose, the self is divided into two. Now it brings the self divided into two, okay? So the teaching method, consciousness of the self is divided into four, but here for teaching purpose, the self is presented as divided into two, yeah? Jiva and Ishvara. So for both Jiva and Ishvara, there is an original supporting consciousness. So now we have Jivatma, Paramatma, and we have a supporting consciousness, okay? For Jivatma and Ishvara, sorry, not Paramatma. For Ishvara and Jivatma, we know there is Jivatma and there is Ishvara, there is Jagata, and everything here is supported by Paramatma or Paramartha, consciousness, the self. So we have Jiva and Ishvara, and they are supported by original consciousness. Of the four, Jiva and Ishvara are Mithya. So now we have Jiva and Ishvara, and we know that Jiva and Ishvara are Mithya. Yeah? Jiva is integral part of Mithya. Jiva is integral part of Jagata. Yeah? And Ishvara is the intelligent cause and the material cause as well of Jagata. So everything is Ishvara. Jiva is integral part of this Jagata, which is a physical material expression of Ishvara. Yeah? Of these four, Jiva and Ishvara are said to be Mithya, reflections, and we know it well that Jiva is a minor micro reflection, which occurs in one's subtle body, and then Ishvara is the macro reflection that occurs in the Maya Prakriti. So of these four, Jiva and Ishvara are reflections, and two are pure original consciousness, Satyam. So now it's dividing consciousness. Consciousness, of course, is one without a second. It is a partless whole, and it cannot be divided. It's for the sake of teaching methodology. It's divided like that in four factors, let's say, okay? So we see Mithya, two factors, which is the creator and the creature, okay? And both are clearly supported by consciousness, because Ishvara is pure intelligence, and it is pure knowledge. And Jiva, it has a certain intelligence and experience knowledge, the ability to know phenomenal objects and to know one's true nature. So we have the Chit and the Sat aspect supporting these two principles called Ishvara and Jiva. But they are both Mithya. They are both Mithya. But there are also two other aspects that they say here that is Satyam. Okay. So now, which are these two other aspects that are said to be Satya? Because Satya is not made of two parts, So two factors maybe, which are these Satyam, two pure original consciousness. They call here Kustata and Brahman. Kustata and Brahman are the same. Okay, and then why to divide, to split Kustata and Brahman into two if they are the same? That takes me to the teachings, I guess, the final teachings of Drisha as well. So Kustata and Brahman are the same, but they are two words. Two words are used to indicate two different ways of looking at the self. Okay, so now Brahman is the self. And then he presents another way to understand Brahman, which is from a point of view of the Jivatma, the individual self. Okay, the individual Jiva. Are you guys still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Kustata and Brahman are the same, but two words are used to indicate two different ways of looking at consciousness, look at the self. Okay, from the point of view of the individual and from Ishwara's point of view. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we understand why they have to break consciousness into two principles from two perspectives. One is from the point of view of the individual, the other is from Ishwara's point of view. And then they present here an analogy, okay? It says like San Francisco from the standpoint of the USA is said to be in California. But if you look at it from a Russian point of view, you will say that California is in the USA, that San Francisco is in the USA. In either case, San Francisco has not moved. It did not move from California to USA because California is contained with USA. So it depends from the perspective, the angle, the point of view. So what is it taking us? So we have a Brahman, and we have something which is the closest to the concept we have seen in the previous class of the Drisha of the Paramartika Jiva. So what is the essential nature of the Paramartika Jiva? It is what? It's Paramartha, it's Brahman. So the Jiva, with this knowledge in respect to its true nature, is present in that teaching as a Paramartika Jiva, differentiating from the Vyavaharika and the Pratibhasika Jiva, the two other states. And then they say there is a certain other state that the Jiva is said to be Paramartha, one with Paramartha, because its true essential nature is Paramartha. And then they say Paramartika Jiva. And then we have Paramartika Jiva and we have Paramartha, Paramartha being the essential nature of the Paramartika Jiva that knows its nature to be Paramartha, or limitless awareness, consciousness. So let's see here. Looking at the self from the point of view of individual, we say that San Francisco is within the USA. And it's said to be in California, but from another perspective, you say it is within the USA. And then if you ever meet an extraterrestrial, we may hear them say that San Francisco is within the planet Earth, for example, different point of view. In either case, San Francisco has not moved. There is also confusion between Jiva and Kustata, and a confusion between Brahman and Ishwara. There is a confusion, also confusion between Jiva and Kustata, and a confusion between Brahman and Ishwara. So the practice is to discriminate Jiva and Ishwara from consciousness, from the self. So we have to practice discrimination, because discrimination is going to bring about indirect self-knowledge, and later on it's going to convert indirect into direct self-knowledge. So this discrimination is going to resolve the confusion between what? Between Brahman and Ishvara, and Jiva and Kustata, okay? So to explain this prakriya, a special metaphor is employed. Microcosm. The space we see in a pot is filled with water, which reflects the sun and reflects the clouds. Now there is a space we see in a pot, we fill it with water, and then the surface of the water will reflect the sun and the clouds. What is the difference between the two spaces? The space we see the pot, and the space outside of the pot. The pot space is space within the pot in which there are no sun and clouds. So, but in the reflected space, water space, there are clouds, there are sun. One is original space and the other is reflected space. Okay. So what I want to do, I want to stop our class today a little earlier. It's not much because of my internet connections, because I started reading this few pages, as I often do before we begin our class. And I was not very much clear about these analogies. And in this book, this compilation of Ramji, it does not offer much teaching, much explanation, to clarify these two analogies. There is another analogy that's coming. And since I read it just a half an hour before we begin the class, I did not have time to go and look into the unfoldment of Swami Paramarthananda to see if I can understand better these analogies. So I'm going to read it, and then we're going to get back next week from this point, from these verbs, from this verse on. Okay, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Hoping that the signal here will be better next week. Can I see you guys? Okie dokie. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. We meet again this coming Monday. Namaste, Mark. We meet again soon.
Thanks. Okay.